Um, so we talked about something heavy that you had faced before, which was domestic violence. But there's another, sadly, story of something you went through. Can you tell us what happened after you were able to get away and eventually have a new relationship?
Sure. Well, definitely from leaving the domestic violence situation, and of course that was many, many years ago, 1988 as actually. I put myself through school and moved on, started a career, became very successful, and eventually met someone and settled down, got married. We were married for about 8.5 years or so. Yeah, 8.5 years married, actually, together for 10. So it's a whole decade there. And ironically, having had the domestic violence in my life in the 80s, in 2005, a little over 5 years ago, my husband chose suicide. So now I am a widow and a survivor of suicide also. And suicide is something that is very rarely discussed. From what I have found out over the years of having to grieve and recover and heal from becoming not only a widow, but a widow of suicide, and accepting the fact that my husband at the time, my spouse, chose to leave and no longer be here anymore.
What were the emotions you faced when that happened? And I'm sure there's a lot of confusion and sadness. What did you feel when it first happened?
Well, when it first happened, I kind of have to go back a little bit, because what led to his suicide, of course, he's not here to answer those questions, but I literally watched this beautiful man. He was 6'1", blonde hair, blue eyes, from New York, just gorgeous, strong, manly man is what I would call him. Just go down into this very deep, dark place, this depression, and refusing to get help. He was diagnosed manically depressed, but wouldn't take medication. He was very vain about it, I guess, in a way. Hitting 40, 41, he had an issue turning 40. That was a big deal for him at the time. And it was very sad to watch somebody in this dark place just keep going down. He threatened it many, many times. And at the time I traveled a lot for work. I'd be gone for days at a time and not knowing what I was coming home to, because he would have threatened it on the phone, and then maybe I had a 5-hour plane ride. And so that was very stressful for me as well. But the day he did it, it was a Saturday, and he told me around 3 o'clock he was going to lay down and take a nap, which he was in the construction industry, so for him to take a nap at 2 or 3 in the afternoon was an everyday thing, because he'd be out of the house at 4 or 5 in the morning. And so he went back to take a nap, and within about 5-10 minutes I heard one shot, and I knew I knew what he did. And the door was locked, and I ran down to the hall, and I couldn't get the door open. And so I ran out of this hallway door, which kind of took you outside to the back patio where the master bedroom was, and then there was a second shot. And then I came back in and finally got the door opened. And then I ran back to the kitchen. I called 911. And I give the crisis response team a lot of credit, because they zoomed right on in and took care of me, I guess is what you call it. They immediately had me be taken up to a neighbor's house, and of course the detectives and the police officers are there, and everybody had to go over and over exactly what occurred that day. But very crazy time.
Do you feel like it's been 5 years that you've made peace with it? And if so, how have you been able to heal? Obviously, losing someone you love is very tough. What were you able to do to try to handle what you were facing?
Well, one thing that I have told myself from the day it happened, having lived when I chose to get married, I chose to be married, and you take those vows, and And even though at the time there was some negativity from a depression standpoint, you know, he's the one that chose to leave. And so I leave, that's what I call it. I don't say killed himself, I said he chose to leave. You know, he chose not to be here. But what I take for that is you can't take life too seriously. Maybe that sounds a little bit shallow or a little bit cold-hearted, but I promised myself that I always find humor in life and I will laugh every day about something. And that to me has helped me heal. I surround myself with people with sense of humors, people that are striving to be better people. But when things get tough, because it's tough times out here in the world, just being here, you know, in the world, the economy's bad, people, you know, financial issues or whatever. But you have to just put one foot in front of the other and just keep going. I know that since then, in 5 years, 2 years after that, a very, very good friend of mine, she's the one that helped me pack up my house after my husband died. 2 years after my husband died, her husband passed away from cancer. And then just last April, a friend of mine on the East Coast, her husband did the same thing as mine. So it's it's a subject matter that I have found is not talked about a lot. People, I don't know if they're fearful to talk about it, but it's something that happens more often than people are willing to believe or understand. Suicide actually is out there a lot.
If you were to have someone watching this video that either has contemplated suicide or is depressed, is there any type of hope or encouragement you could give them, something you would say to them? You're on the other side, you had your husband no longer be here,
Right.
so you see the impact of it after. What would you tell someone that maybe wants to give up or doesn't feel like they can go on? Is there something you would say to kind of encourage them to get help and to, you know, stay here?
Well, what I say to folks, or my saying, basically, there's two different ones. There's the old saying, don't give up before the miracle happens. And the miracle is, this too shall pass. You know, everybody has a bad day, everybody gets in a funk. But tomorrow is not going to be the same as today. And that's the way I look at it. And that's what I try to project to people. And there's another saying, and it is from a movie, but it's a saying that I hold on to. It's get busy living or get busy dying. And I choose to live today. And I choose not to let negativity drag me down, though on occasion it's hard. You know, it's hard. Right now, because at the time when my husband passed away, my son was already in college. We did not have children, and though maybe that would be harder for me to recover from a spouse committing suicide if we did have children together, because you would have to explain that to the children, you know. But one of the things that I also found out is the mental health issues and the fact that my husband had tried or attempted suicide 2 to 3 times, I think 2 times previously in his life. And it was a family secret, and none of my in-laws shared that with me until the day after he was dead. And so for me, and I had been on the phone every day for 6 months or on email to my mother-in-law, crying and begging, you know, your son doesn't want to live, I don't know what to do. And the family secret was such a secret that even her, as his mother, did not open up to me, did not say, call 911, get him, you know, under observation or something. And so I think if anybody's family secrets are such, I think that they need to be willing to open up about it. Maybe it would have helped my husband, maybe not, you know. But I do have to live with the fact that he chose to leave, but I'm still here. And 4 days after he passed away, I was, you know, taking a shower. I had to get ready, you know, whatever. And I basically, of course, you know, cried and screaming and yelling. You go through anger and all that, but walk through it, the suicide, walk through being a widow with grace and dignity. And that's what I try to do every day. You know, I think that it's horrible if people want to choose to live in the misery and the grief always. You have to keep going.
Well, thank you so much. You're an inspiration. I know you've been through a lot, and I hope the next 10 or 20 years are a lot easier and more filled with laughter and happiness for you.
I hope so too. Yay.
Thank you.
Thanks.